Greetings, true believers. Agent 66 here, head of the MAXCORP division of S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, I thought I'd switch things up a bit today with this question from Parthenon. Okay, what about Captain America's shield? 'Cause I don't know very well the history. Well, Parthenon, it looks like you're in luck. After I helped fight off the Skrull invasion on both Wakanda and the Moon, the Black Panther was very grateful and gave me this solid adamantium vibranium shield. Pretty cool, huh? Now, while it is not an exact replica of Captain America's shield, it does share very many of the same attributes. For instance, it is a very aerodynamic offensive and defensive tool. It can be thrown with ease. The vibranium itself can absorb almost unlimited kinetic energy. This is what allows it to ricochet off walls while losing essentially none of its momentum. The vibranium is also what allows Cap to get hit by people like the Hulk with such great force and not get thrown back thousands of feet. And it returns with ease. Alright, let's just move on to the history of the shield itself. Originally, Captain America's shield was not the disc shape we recognize today. In his debut, Captain America has a triangular shield, simply made of some bulletproof alloy. However, this first triangular shield was actually given by Captain America to King T'Chaka of Wakanda as a pledge that the nation would remain uninvolved throughout the rest of the war. This shield is still on display in Wakanda and is considered a national treasure. When Captain America returns to the United States, he is given a second triangular shield. He uses this for a while longer until he is personally presented a disc-shaped shield by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The triangular shield is kept with the rest of Captain America's effects after the war. Years later, when Cap joins the Avengers, he recovers the shield and keeps it in the Avengers Mansion. This second triangular shield is later destroyed during a raid on Avengers Mansion. However, sometime afterward, the shield is plucked from time and is then returned to Captain America. More recently, that shield has been given to Elijah Bradley, known as the Patriot. Now, there is a third triangular shield, but I'm gonna get to that in a minute. Okay, so now let's get back to the regular disc-shaped shield's history. As I mentioned before, the shield was given to Captain America by President Franklin Roosevelt. The shield itself was crafted by expert metallurgist Dr. Myron McLean. Dr. McLean had been commissioned by the American government to do experiments on the metal vibranium. However, during one of his experiments to fuse vibranium with an experimental iron alloy, Dr. McLean fell asleep. During his slumber, the experiment experienced an unknown catalyst, causing the materials to bind together, and thus Captain America's shield was formed. It's a common misconception about Captain America's shield that it's actually a vibranium adamantium alloy. In fact, Dr. Myron McLean is the creator of adamantium. However, it was not created until after Captain America was rescued from suspended animation. Actually, interesting side note, when Dr. McLean invented adamantium, he was actually trying to replicate the process of making Captain America's shield. Now, for a time, after Captain America was released from suspended animation, he lent his shield to Tony Stark for analysis. During this time, he used several steel substitutes. These steel replicas were of such poor quality in comparison that Captain America eventually had to stock all of the Avengers' vehicles full of spare shields in the event that one of them broke. When Tony Stark returned Captain America's original shield, he had added some microcircuitry so that Cap could control the shield in mid-air. However, Cap felt that the electronics threw the shield off balance, and so he later discarded of all the microcircuitry. Throughout the many years afterwards, Captain America's shield has actually broken a number of times. The first time it was destroyed was by the Molecule Man. The Molecule Man has total control over all matter at the subatomic level. In this instance, he not only destroyed Captain America's shield, but also the Silver Surfer's surfboard, Thor's hammer Mjolnir, and Iron Man's armor. Now, those guys did eventually convince the Molecule Man that he was being a total jerk, so he agreed to put their stuff back together again. But when he did, he commented on each of their items. The Silver Surfer's board was created by Galactus's Power Cosmic. Molecule Man called its molecules weird. To Thor's hammer created by the All-Father Odin, he said there were odd forces interweaving. However, he called Captain America's shield the weirdest of all. During the Secret Wars, the shield was partially destroyed by Doctor Doom, who had stolen the powers of the godlike being, the Beyonder. When the Beyonder reclaimed his powers, everyone who had been affected by the powers under Doom's reign got a small wish. Captain America's was for his shield to be repaired again. And so it was. However, not too long afterwards, Steve Rogers lost his shield in the Atlantic Ocean. A while later it was recovered, but when they finally set it down, the shield shattered into 100 pieces. It turns out that when the Beyonder had recreated Rogers' shield, there was a small molecular imperfection, and throughout the vast amount of beatings the shield had taken, the imperfection eventually spread throughout the entire shield. Thus, after that long at the incredible depths at the bottom of the ocean, the strain eventually gave way and the shield had shattered. However, this broken vibranium creates a sort of shockwave traveling throughout the entire planet. When the shockwave reaches any vibranium deposits, they immediately explode. So Captain America tapes his shield back together and travels to Wakanda in order to stop the shield from detonating the vast amount of vibranium deposits held in the Wakandan landscape. Rogers' hopes are that his jury-rigged shield will absorb the shockwave and save the world from the impending explosion. However, when Rogers reaches Wakanda, he finds that the supervillain Claw has already gotten there. Claw's power is that he can absorb waves similar to this shockwave. So, Claw absorbs the entire shockwave and then turns on Captain America. He strikes at Cap's dilapidated shield, but then through some miracle, the entire power of the vibranium shockwave gets transferred into the shield itself, returning it to its original state. So the shockwave is gone, and Cap's shield is back to normal. Another time the shield's been destroyed was when Thanos had complete control over the Infinity Gauntlet and all of the Infinity Gems. With it, he has basically unstoppable power over everything in the universe. So, when a good portion of Earth's heroes went to confront him, one of the things he destroyed was Captain America's shield. Eventually, later, Thanos' granddaughter stole the Infinity Gauntlet from him and reversed all of the effects of everything he'd done. Lastly, once, when trying to calm an enraged Thor, Captain America put his shield between the God and Iron Man. This resulted in leaving a visible dent in the shield itself. The damage was later fixed by Thor himself. Now I'm going to talk about some of the alternate versions of Captain America's shields that have existed over the years. During the time that Steve Rogers was trapped in suspended animation, 3 other people took up the mantle of Captain America. Each of these 3 people all used steel shields. Later, when the Steve Rogers Captain America refused to take orders from the American government, he decided to give up his role as Captain America. In his place came the former super patriot, John Walker. This John Walker Captain America took Steve Rogers' invincible shield and outfit. Now, Steve Rogers still wanted to fight crime, so he took up the mantle of the Captain. Originally as the Captain, Rogers used a pure adamantium shield provided by Tony Stark. However, the two had a falling out during the Armor Wars, so Rogers returned the shield back to Tony. Shortly after, T'Challa, the Black Panther, gave the Captain a pure vibranium shield, which he used for the rest of his time under that name. Eventually, Steve Rogers went back to being Captain America, and John Walker turned into the U.S. agent. Steve Rogers, now Captain America again, got all his old stuff back, and John Walker got Rogers' pure vibranium shield. At another point, Steve Rogers was exiled from the United States and was briefly unable to use his shield. During this time, Agent 13, Sharon Carter, gave Rogers a photonic energy shield, designed to mimic a vibranium matrix. This photonic energy shield could also turn into a bow staff that could be used as a weapon. Now, if you recall, I mentioned earlier that there was a third triangular shield. This shield was used during the time that Cap's original shield was lost at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. This third shield was only used once. It was located at the Smithsonian Institute, where there was a Hydra terrorist attack going on. When Cap arrived, he used the triangular shield that was on display there. Also during the time that Cap's original shield was lost at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, Agent 13 gave him a second photonic energy shield. Rogers used this for a while, but eventually gave it to a freedom fighter in an alternate timeline. And now, Bucky Barnes, the new Captain America, uses Cap's original circular shield. Thanks for your question, Parthenon.